Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Bienvenue, welcome. This is Game Over Montreal. I am Andrew Berkshire, and I'm here with managing editor of the Narwhal, Mike D'Souza, who happens to be a gigantic Montreal Canadiens fan. And I am so sorry, Mike, that I had to get you to come on and watch that game after the Canadiens have been playing so well over this last stretch, and then you get that, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But that's where we are.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Andrew. Just one correction: I was managing editor up
Oh, you're not.
until July, and I'm now the director of investigations at the.
Ooh. So, what does the director of investigation do?
Well, leads investigations, manages all of the investigative work that we do. So it's my job to kind of oversee uh, the deep dives that we're doing, the enterprise work, uncovering, pushing reporters on our team to uncover stuff and go after the hidden stories. And so sometimes that also means that that I do some of the reporting myself, and sometimes it's overseeing the others. And ideally, we're a nonprofit at the Narwhal, and we have a pretty big newsroom. We have about a dozen reporters right now, but we need more investigative reporters. So hopefully we continue to grow, and I can have a larger team at some point in the near future.
Yeah, it's really cool. I feel like the Narwhal has gotten really big in the last several years. As you know, it's indie media, but it's getting to be bigger and bigger. Hold on for 1 second. Miles, please don't dig in there. So just to
Yep.
be fully on the level for everyone who's watching here, I had both kids tonight solo. My wife was out working. We didn't realize that we were both working tonight at the same time, and bedtime did not take. So I've got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old running around here somewhere in the background. And I'll be frank with everyone in the chat who's joining us here today. I did not get to pay as much attention to this game as you did. I was putting out some fires, dealing with some different things, trying to get bedtime going. So if we need some help from the chat on any game, this is this is the game where you can fill me in. I didn't even see the second Montreal goal.
Yeah, so the second period was not bad for Montreal. It was they scored two, Detroit scored two, but I think it was like 5 minutes into the second period. It was like the shots were 20-4 or something like that for Detroit. It wasn't a good start for Montreal, where Detroit came out very desperate and was really pushing, hustling, winning all the battles in the corners, and yeah, just being the first on the puck. And Montreal kind of got a bit more of its legs in that second period. And yeah, that second goal by Gouli, he played a very good game. He was one of the bright spots, I think, in the game. Blocked a few shots. I always get the impression that he's playing with a few broken bones with all the shots that I see him blocking and wincing in pain as he leaves the ice. But he's quite a player, and Montreal's lucky to have him.
Yeah. I see Trinka in the chat says it didn't miss much, and Bernardo says, we honestly don't have to do a recap. So you know what? Let's not. Let's throw this one in the can, and let's talk to Mike about some serious stuff, because sometimes in hockey we can talk about things that are a little bit more, I would say, political, but everything in life is political and everything touches on it. And obviously there's a big deal with the Montreal Canadiens in that their top prospect, Ivan Demidov, is Russian. There have been things going on this year while he's over there. His coach is not what you would call a regular hockey guy coach. Usually there's some nepotism in hockey anyway, but this guy's like the son of an oligarch and does not have any experience, and basically got hired and has been playing him like some nights 4 or 5 minutes, despite the fact that he's like clearly the best player on the team. So the Canadiens decided to go over to Russia and meet with Demidov, meet with the coach, and see what's going on there with their own eyes, and I guess get a pulse on the situation, a little bit closer to it. And in the process, met with some folks that maybe they shouldn't have. And maybe that's not necessarily a choice if you go over to Russia. But Mike brought up the question when that whole thing happened that I didn't really see anyone in hockey media ask, which was, should they have gone over there? Should they have done that? So, Mike, can you kind of give the situation from
Mhm.
your point of view as a journalist and kind of lay the table for us of what you think happened out there in Russia and what was like the problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think like to be fair, like there's some media outlets that have asked the right questions to the Canadians and have pursued the story completely. Some have not. Some have kind of done a bit of a incomplete job, I think, and some have just been misinformed. So is it right for the team to go over there and check in on a player or meet with a player? Probably it is. Like, I mean, I think it makes sense that you wanna keep track of a top prospect. What is a bit of a challenge in this case is of course, the head of Russia. Russia is the head of Russia, or the president of Russia. Putin is a war criminal right now. He has illegally invaded a country, is leading an illegal war, and Canada is supporting Ukraine, the country that was attacked under this war, and that's being unfairly targeted. And Canada has reacted to the war by imposing sanctions. Canada has imposed sanctions on Russia since 2014, I think, listing a number of people, allies, close allies to Putin, who Canadians should not be doing business with and should be extremely careful if they're seen with these people. And on this list now, there's hundreds of people. One of them just happens to be Roman Roddenberry, the coach of the St. Petersburg team. So when the Canadians went down there, and they agreed to get their picture taken with this guy and show up in a video, and then not only show up in a video, but if you look at the videos that they were in, they also mic'd themselves up. Like they took the time to actually put on lapel mics, and knowing that they would be in this video with someone who is an ally, a sanctioned ally of a war criminal.
Yep.
Um, and to put that in perspective, if a Canadian is found to be doing business with someone on a sanctions list, that is a crime in Canada. Um, you're just not supposed to be doing that. Now, in this case, we don't know what they discussed privately. Presuming, well, there's no evidence that they did actually any business transaction, but um, just putting yourself in the situation where you're meeting with someone who is on a sanctions list is not the greatest idea or the best idea. So, I mean, if I let's say I was in the comms department at the Canadians or any kind of advisory position. Right now, I'm a fan. I'm speaking as a fan. I've grown up in Montreal. I've been a fan since the 1980s. I was born in the 70s and, love the Canadians all my life. But speaking as a fan, if I were advising them, I mean, I would have done a little bit of research before this trip, just figure out, okay, what situations are we going to be in? Who are we meeting with? Is is anyone that we're meeting with on a sanctions list? Do we want to avoid getting our picture taken with someone in a sanctions list? Do we want to avoid getting featured in a video where we're seen to be endorsing a position that Russia should be welcomed back into international hockey? Which, as you know, like the IIHF has banned Russia from international competition because of the war. So, the coach came out, he showed the video, he showed the pictures, he made it seem like the Canadians were fully supporting Russia's return to international hockey competition. And I have yet to see the Canadians comment on that or refute it. And I mean, is it because they worked out some deal saying, okay, you can say that, we won't say anything, and then we'll let Demidov play 20 minutes a game, which he has been since then. Is that the deal they struck? Maybe, but it's not a great look. Now, also, I mean, again, as a fan, I'm excited that we're getting a player like Demidov coming next year. I'm excited to watch the games and watch him play, but there's a difference here between um, supporting a prospect and helping a prospect and supporting the ally of a war criminal and supporting Russian propaganda. And this visit of the Canadiens, it's been used within Russia, where like support within Russia. There might be. I mean, it's not. It's not like Putin has an iron grip on power, but there is opposition. There are people in Russia that are opposed to Putin, that are opposed to the war. And when the Montreal Canadiens go down there and they're seen to be endorsing a team like that and endorsing the government of Russia, that's not helpful for democracy and freedom in the world.
Yeah, Bernardo Saunier in the chat says the lack of statement is pretty damning, and I tend to agree. This is kind of it's an issue not just in hockey, obviously, but the lack of transparency and accountability in general from people in positions of power, not just in this country, obviously, but it seems like it's kind of the state of the West, and the fact that if you want to get answers from a team like the Canadiens, like you're gonna have to play ball. You're gonna have to be there for a long amount of time and put in your. And I understand that's part of journalism too, right? You've got to pound the pavement and make those connections, all that. But it just seems like there's not really a mechanism to compel people who have that much power to talk frankly about these kinds of things, right? And you mentioned that Russia itself used this video and they're kind of using the Canadiens, and maybe they struck a deal. If they did, that is very bad. Like, it looks very, very bad as an organization to prioritize hockey over, the actual lives that are being affected in these conflicts. And, dealing with Putin is a whole other thing. I guess
again, just Andrew, I'm speculating when I say was there a deal or asking whether there's
a
deal.
Yeah. So am I.
I mean, obviously, I don't have any evidence of that, and I wouldn't want to say or assume the worst. Hopefully, it wasn't the worst, but some of the reporters covering the Canadiens right now, they've kind of dropped the ball on this in terms of that's a question that they could ask. Some of them, again, they just haven't been informed about who Roman Rottenberg actually is. The fact that he was working for a state oil and gas company right before he became coach. Like some journalists have figured that out and have reported it. A lot of them don't, and a lot of them just again they just. I've heard different journalists on other podcasts, which I won't mention their names while I'm on this podcast, but I've heard journalists just say, well, the reporters trying to cover this, they're trying to get clicks, and no, I mean the reporters covering this maybe were trying to do their jobs, but even at that, like the issue that this guy is on a Canadian sanctions list, not many journalists got that. Like the initial reporting from the French media actually had only referred to him being on a U.S. list, and they hadn't actually checked the Canadian government sanctions list, which is, some of it is journalism 101. And I mean, whether you're a sports journalist, a news journalist, entertainment journalist, there's some rules that I think everyone should, or standards that everyone should adhere to. And in this case, there was a lack of rigor on the part of some journalists chasing this story, and hopefully they can do better and maybe get better informed and dig into this a bit more.
Yeah, if I were to play like devil's advocate, and I kind of don't like doing that in most situations, but because Roman Rottenberg himself is on that sanctions list and he's the coach that is coaching Ivan Demidov, if you were the Canadiens, like, I feel like they would probably say, what is the other option other than meeting with this person? Like, he's kind of the direct contact between the team and the player. Do you think that there is a way that they could have approached this in a more I don't want to say transparent, but a more ethical way, because I know there's some comments in the chat saying like it's disappointing, especially because this management group does seem to actually care about this kind of stuff, at
Yeah.
least on the surface, and it does care about team culture. I think that's very clear
Yeah.
in the decisions that they make and the group that they put together. So do you think there is a way, or is it just like hockey men are not willing to go about things in an ethical way when it comes down to
Yeah.
dealing with their top
So
prospects if they don't have to?
I'll give a shout out and entry to so the Montreal Gazette in the past couple of weeks. One of their news reporters, not a sports reporter, did a story that correctly identified Roman Roddenberry as being on the sanctions list. After that, Jack Todd did a column about it, and he asked some of these questions to the Canadiens. One of them was, "Did you know Roman Roddenberry was on the sanctions list?" And the Canadiens actually said no, they didn't know. So
Oh, okay.
um, again, that's being misinformed, and it's just, I mean, to for lack of a better word, it's incompetence just in not knowing or not being informed and not planning this sort of trip. Now, to
Yeah.
do it in an ethical way, um, I mean, they could have gone down there. They could have just said, "We're there. We're just there to meet with Demidov and Bogishtin is the defenseman also who's playing in. I think was playing for the opposing team against St. Petersburg that game that they wanted to meet with as well. I think they did meet with the other player, but they could have told Ska, "We're not going to we're not going to pose in a photograph. If you want to take a selfie, we're not in it. If you want to shoot a video, we're not going to do this. Hopefully this isn't. Hopefully they didn't agree to it so that they can show it on the rebuild next year on Crave. But um, if we see any of the footage there, I will have more questions. But um, yeah, so they could have taken that approach. But the other thing that, I mean, I would play some devil's advocate here too, that you might have players like Demidov and he and his family could be in danger. And they also want to be careful not to do something that puts Ivan Demidov in danger, or any other players. So that's an issue that maybe they were navigating, and they were trying to be careful around. Um, so it's not a win. It's far from a win-win. It's a lose-lose
Yeah.
situation. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't in this sort of thing. But I think there's some things they could have done better. There's one other thing that I think is, that is kind of interesting in this, is that Kent Hughes mentioned seeing other NHL teams there. And there are plenty of other reporters who cover NHL teams that I think should be asking questions about who were those teams there. Who invited them from Russia to be there? How did they arrange those visits? If you want to visit Russia as a Canadian or an American, there's so many hoops you have to jump through. You can't use credit cards. Like the credit card companies are banned from allowing transactions to go through. So you need to get cash. You need to get a special visa. There's all sorts of obstacles you have to kind of navigate to get into that country right now. You don't get direct flights from Canada to Russia. You have to fly through other countries. So how did all these teams get in there? With the Canadiens, Nick Bobrov, the head of scouting, I think we know his dad works for this team, for Ska. Maybe that's how they got the invitation. I don't know. And if it is, maybe that's fair. If you have a relative there who facilitates to visit, that's fine. But if you have a member of Putin's regime who helped you get in, that's something else.
Yeah.
So a lot of questions for the NHL to answer too. Even when one of your biggest stars on his Instagram profile has a picture of himself with Putin, that's not the best thing for the NHL either.
Yeah, 100%. We're gonna keep coming back to this conversation, but before I do, I'm just gonna do a quick ad read because I forgot to do one off the beginning of the show. I'm a little bit rattled from talking serious, watching that terrible game, and then having these ones on the show as well, which we're not supposed to have, but that's okay. So I want to tell everyone about our sponsors, both of them here that came on board recently, Inchu Bijou and Le Saint Motel, both located here in Montreal in the historic Chateau Saint Ambroise, 4000 Rue Saint Ambroise, Suite 278, and just beside it. But you can enter Le Saint Motel through Inchu Bijou. Inchu is a amazing goth glam jewelry store. Sorry, I almost said goth glam ghoulie store, but not quite. Maybe Ghoulie likes it. We'll never know. We'll bring him there maybe one day. He'll shop around. But it's this amazing place run by a near and dear friend of mine. Astrid and her Wicked team have put on amazing work over the last couple of years. They've been invited to Paris Fashion Week, Milan Fashion Week. They have, little simple silver stuff that they've made that's like really affordable, to gold pieces, to like custom made bespoke pieces. It's really damn cool. And then next door, they've got their selfie studio, Le Saint Motel, which is associated but separate. And it's really fun. There's a bunch of different decors that you can go there, have some fun with friends, take promotional pictures for your business, and they even have setups that you can take that you can rent. So they'll bring it to your event space, set it up, take it down. You can jump into their heart-shaped ball pit. They have that in their actual place, and they have another one that they can bring to an event. It's super fun. It's very Montreal. They've got like an Expo 67 little setup there. It sounds funny, like for folks who are maybe older than millennials, to do like a selfie studio thing. But I promise you, if you go hang out there, it is a lot of fun. They've got some cool stuff there. So check out. It's as big of a deal as going to Russia and meeting with an oligarch or an oligarch's son.
So sorry, Andrew. I lost audio for about 30 seconds or so. So I missed. I just heard the last part about oligarch.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So one
But
second, Milesy. I'm just gonna ask my question, then you can say something to me. Okay. Uh, so my question is, with things going on in the United States right now, say somebody, whoever wins the Stanley Cup this year is an American team. It's usually an American team for the last 30 plus years. If they were to go to the White House, say, to accept their like celebration after what just happened at the inauguration with like the Nazi salute that Elon Musk. Miles, you keep muting my mic, buddy. The salute that Elon Musk did, all the things that are kind of twisting in the States. Do you think at a certain point that becomes something that's as big of a deal to talk about as the Russia trip?
if a team goes to the White House, there were teams going to the White House
Last
between
time.
2016 and 2020, or between 2017 and 2020, from all sports. What's what has been dubbed as acceptable now in the U.S. has changed. Um, if I am far from being good enough to be a professional athlete, but let's say I was invited to the White House as a journalist for after winning a Pulitzer or something, which also might be highly unlikely. But the White House is an institution. who is there right now. Like maybe I would make a personal choice or think about that or reflect before visiting myself. But it's kind of hard to I think criticize an athlete for that, accepting or refusing that sort of invitation. I think more where there might be issues is where, let's talk about ice hockey. In when I was growing up in Montreal, I had a backyard rink, and that's how I learned to skate. That's how I learned to play hockey. Um, in the past 5, 10 years, the ability to build a backyard ice rink or even any of the outdoor rinks in Montreal. Like we had an outdoor rink down the street that was managed by the city. Growing up, with all the freeze and thaw cycles that we face right now, um, it's less and less likely that you're going to have good ice to be able to learn and play hockey. So if I were a professional athlete, maybe particularly an ice hockey player, maybe they should be talking more about climate change, and um, maybe they should be challenging politicians about that issue that affects the sport that they grew up to love and that they're making a living out of. What happens to those future generations? So when athletes take positions on politics, supporting a candidate who might not be wanting to take aggressive action that maybe we need to be taking right now on climate, or when they're not speaking out, when they're silent about such an important issue for the future of the game, I think that might be an area where I'd like to challenge. As a fan, again, not speaking as a journalist, but as a fan, I'd like to see some athletes starting to take a more rigorous stand there.
Yeah, unfortunately with hockey, I don't think we have many climate change activists. We have a few. I know Andrew Ference was big into it back in the day. Miles, what did you want to ask me?
Yeah, now he works for the league,
Are
I
you
think.
wake you from it more?
What do I like this view? What?
You like this one of seeing them most or the other ones?
Like on here? Well, this is Miles was just seeing behind the scenes because I've got two different screens here. One is like the broadcast screen, and one's like the one I'm going to shift to for the next segment. I like them both the same, buddy. They just serve different purposes. That's all. All right. But yeah, I think Ference. Yeah, you're right. I think he works for the league now. The league doesn't seem to be super concerned with being that progressive on many different issues. They seem to enjoy the fan base that they have and not be willing to reach out and try to expand it, which is, a whole other can of worms. But getting back to the Canadiens
They're still on
and
Twitter
Russia.
too. And all the teams are still on Twitter and not moving over to Blue Sky.
Which is very surprising because what I've been trying to tell everyone who's still on Twitter is that like the interactions and click-throughs on Blue Sky are already superior. Like Twitter has not, like, for anybody who's doing what we do, where like the reason we're on there is to share our work, right? And build a community, build relationships with people. That doesn't really exist on Twitter anymore. Like, I don't know how you guys are
I
for the
think,
narwhal.
yeah, I mean, for engagement for media outlets, Blue Sky is superior for more intelligent conversation and engagement with real people. There's still a certain degree of reach on Twitter, for media outlets. Not It's not the number one source of traffic, far from it, and it's been a while since it has been a good source, but it still is a source. And I think for a professional sports team, the algorithms might still allow them to get a good reach when they post, but I think like it's an ethical question of supporting a platform that is, well, suppressing um, some intelligent or free discussion and fair discussion and responsible conversations. It's a platform that is platforming hate in some ways, and some things that are not positive. So um, it would be nice to see the teams at least try to engage. I saw a story about a team from another league that had been told, I forget if it was the NFL, that was telling one of their teams to get off Blue Sky and that it wasn't permitted. So I don't know if
Really?
that's the case with the NHL as well.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with there, but you would think that even just the verification process of being able to use their own website would be attractive to NHL teams, right? Nobody can pay for a verification and spoof things. There can be no confusion, right? So you would think that there'd be a little bit more action on that. I think the Senators are one of the first teams that have started to use Blue Sky pretty extensively. I don't know if they're still on Twitter. I assume so. But I guess that's one of those things where we can never expect corporations to make a moral choice before people
Well,
do.
it's interesting. I mean, the VP comms at the Senators is a former journalist for the Athletic, but the VP comms at the Canadiens is also a former journalist. So
That's true.
would like
Chantal,
to see
yeah.
her maybe take or push the organization. Hopefully, she can push them in a positive direction there.
Yeah, I know she's on Blue Sky because
Yeah,
she's
she
the
is,
one who
yeah.
said that there was a fake Canadiens account
Yeah.
right away.
She is, but her team is not yet, as far
Yeah.
as I can tell.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with like the big organizations, right? It's
I-
like they kind of got to get dragged kicking and screaming.
Yeah. Do you know, actually, Andrew, can you live stream on Blue Sky yet? I don't think you can you? And that might be
I
one
don't believe
issue that-
so.
Yeah. And that
Yeah,
may be
they
one kind of drawback, that they take advantage of that on Twitter or X right now.
yeah, and they also Blue Sky I believe has a pretty low limit on video uploads. I think it's only 50 megabytes, so there's only so much that you can do there. So that's probably another reason, but
I don't know if
there's better reasons to move on.
If you use your own server, though, or
I am not sure. I'll have to check it out. I don't know enough. I have only had time to have fun. I haven't had time to dig in. But let's open it up to the chat here quickly and get some questions here from the folks who've sat here and thankfully not talked about the game. I think everybody's happy to ignore that one and not talk about it. We've got some new fans in here. Thanks for the sub, the YouTuber. Habs fans definitely still welcome, the most welcome, but all fans are welcome when what we're doing here. I'm going to ask a question first about the Canadiens and the Russia thing, just like kind of getting back to it. I guess, is there an answer? Like, what do we want to hear about what went on in Russia? I guess, like, would it be better if, we mentioned like maybe they didn't know that Roman Rottenberg was on the sanctions list, or like, is ignorance a good excuse at this point? Like, I understand that it's hockey and maybe they think that they're not needing to be that serious, but also like Russia is a huge player in hockey. So I feel like ignorance is not a good excuse at all.
Well, not for the situation they let themselves get into, which is essentially just being used. I think they have gone on the record to say like they didn't negotiate any deal. Like I think they've said that, but it's in a statement. It's not in a. It wasn't in a format of an interview or a news conference where there could be follow-up questions just to figure out exactly what they mean by that. I think they've also kind of implied that what happened is they went there to talk with Ivan Demidov and one other prospect, and they got roped into this photo op with Roddenberry that they weren't expecting, and somehow the lapel mics just went up on their jackets by total accident. But yeah, like I mean that. Kent Hughes should know better. Kent Hughes, an agent with a lot of experience, and he knows that it's important, like public perceptions, being a player agent for so long, about what happens if you do some kind of a public misstep. And he was brought in after a bunch of PR disasters and problems from the previous regime. And yeah, I mean, I think he should have known better. I don't know about Mason like Cavalier. I don't know about maybe Nick Bobrov again. Being someone who had a family member who worked for the St. Petersburg team. Maybe he was not as sensitive as to how Canadians would react or perceive what they were doing and who they were meeting with and how they were being featured on a video.
Yeah. If it was as simple as like they didn't expect to get railroaded into being part of a Russian propaganda video, and then they're there and they can't really do anything about it and still see Demidov. I mean, I guess they could make that choice of not seeing the player after going all that way, if that's like the situation that was presented to them. But if, like you mentioned earlier on, the idea of, they want to make sure that Demidov's safe, his family is safe. Obviously, we don't know exactly what happened still, but there was a couple years ago when Matvey Michkov was the top Russian player to be drafted. His father like mysteriously died during the season, and there were weird scouting reports that somehow mentioned that as like a negative for Michkov, which was a weird thing to do. But there was speculation at the time that that might have been due to some internal pressures from the Russian state. I don't know if that has any bearing whatsoever on what actually happened with his death, but obviously there's like some level of fear. If the Canadiens were worried that, like, in pushing back on what they were kind of pushed in to do in Russia, they'd be putting their prospect in danger. Is there a way to like communicate that somewhat effectively through some channels that kind of legitimizes them a little bit, or is it just a situation where there's no real good answer?
It's possible. I mean, they might be waiting until Demidov is safely out of Russia before they do that, before he gets drafted to the army, or who knows what else might happen to him before the end of the season. And hopefully he's safe and is going to make it to Montreal this summer or sooner. um, I think, my biggest criticism here, though, it is to the journalists who are just not asking the questions.
Yeah.
And let the Canadiens just, if they choose not to say anything and it's for safety reasons or other security reasons or other diplomatic reasons, that's fair for the Montreal Canadiens to do that. But the journalists shouldn't be backing off on asking those questions. They need to raise them at least, and maybe someone will tell that story. And I cover politics a lot. I cover industry. If you want to get out a story and you don't want to be quoted, there are ways to do that to leak stuff. I mean, in the NHL, we constantly have stories about JT Miller almost got traded to the Rangers for Benajad and a few others on Friday or Saturday before Saturday's game. The New York Rangers and the Vancouver Canucks, they didn't go out with a statement saying we're trying to do this trade and we're about to do it. People either connected to the organizations or who were aware of the trade leaked it out because they talked to people who leaked it out. And the Canadiens could do that too. If they wanted to get a story out saying, we didn't do anything wrong, or we got fooled, or we got taken advantage of, or we don't support a sanctioned ally of Putin, there's a way to do that.
Yeah, there's always some way, to get some information out there. Frederick Ouellette in the chat says a trade deadline question. I'll throw this to you first, Mike, just opinion. If the Habs are in a playoff position at the trade deadline, is there any player out there that you want to target?
I was reading a piece in the Athletic yesterday about players the Toronto Maple Leafs should target, a bunch of centers, and I was thinking almost all of them look like they could be good fits for the Habs as well. I think Pajot with the Islanders might be an interesting option. Ryan O'Reilly, if he was available, but I don't think he wants to come to Montreal. He might go to Toronto, but I think it might be a difficult trade to get. Scott Lawton from the Flyers might be another one that I think would be an interesting fit. Yeah, those would be the three. Like I've heard people talk about Yanni Gourde, but I don't. I think he's a great playoff player, but I'm not sure because of his size and because of the fact that he seems to be banged up and might not be at 100% this year. I don't know if he would be the best choice.
Yeah, not the best fit this year particularly. I'll tell you my dream scenario, and then I'll tell you what I think I would actually do if I was Kent Hughes. My dream scenario would be Sidney Crosby. I think there's a part of him, at least, that wants to end his career here in Montreal. He grew up loving this team, and he's got so much left in the tank. Like, he's the guy that I could see playing until he's like 45, like Jaromir Jagr style and always effective. I would love to see him in the red, white, or the blue, blanc, rouge. That would be phenomenal. I think it would just light the fan base absolutely on fire, and obviously fast forward the rebuild a little bit. But my overall take is this is the year where you let them sink or swim on their own. And then next year when Demidov comes over, that's when you start building up to trying to actually compete. This year, you kind of let them catch lightning in a bottle if they do. And if they do, see how far they go. But I wouldn't be bending over backwards to add. That's my opinion.
I mean, it would be great to see Sidney Crosby play. I saw him play for the first time in Quebec City. I lived in the early 2000s when he was visiting with Rimouski at that time and had like, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe 7 points in that game. I suppose there's a part of them that would want to come, but I also, I don't think it's realistic that in terms of the pieces the Habs would have to give up, it just wouldn't be worth it. And I think if he goes anywhere, I think it would be Colorado. But I agree, Andrew. I think like after this season, maybe this summer, or maybe next year, will be some more serious buying from the Habs. Next year should be a pretty good year, but some pieces that I think also they could add before the end of this year, another right shot defenseman could be good, and particularly one that has term for next year. I don't know how much David Zaval will have left in the tank next year. He might, but I don't know if, even now the minutes that he's playing aren't
so much
huge. And he blocks a lot of shots. He's amazing shutdown. The game on Tuesday when he just like sat on the puck in the last 10 seconds.
That was incredible.
But he can't do that every game, and it's just you're not always going to be protecting a 1-goal lead and being able to rely on that. You need a player, a defenseman, a right shot defenseman who can play longer minutes, and I think he is a bit banged up and getting towards the point where he's not as effective as someone like Alexandre Carrier has been amazing addition.
Huge breath of fresh air. He's been really fantastic. David Savard, though, I will give him this. He has like single-handedly changed my opinion on like the vet in the room stuff. I've always been very skeptical of that idea, especially when it's like a player that is a net negative on the team on the ice. But David Savard, the way players talk about him, like he is so unbelievably loved. Like I forget which player it was. It might have been Lane Hudson. Had a quote after the last game talking about like how David Savard was like always the first person to give them a boost and like give them a chat and like help them out. Even stuff like working with them outside the rink, like make sure they have food, all that kind of stuff. Little things that just when you're a young kid and you're living on your own for the first time, it's different. You have to learn how to survive. And David Savard has been team dad for a few years now, and that's really fun. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up.
Team against Utah.
Yes, he did. Oh man, he's had some great moments in a Habs jersey, which is crazy considering like the stage of his career and also what they're expecting of him. But I'm going to wrap this up. But before I do, Mike, can you let everyone know who's watching this that whether they've heard of the Narwhal or they have not, I mean, obviously the Narwhal's website, of course, but what's the best way for folks to support the Narwhal and support independent journalism?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for asking. Yeah, happy to chat. Like, so the narwhal.ca is where you can find our work. Yeah, there are a number of media outlets that I think we all need support, including Game Over. For the narwhal, we have now over 6,000, maybe between 6,000 and 7,000 members who are giving on a monthly or annual basis. We have a registered status, journalism status in Canada, which means if you donate to us and you support our journalism, you get a tax receipt, which is kind of neat. And I think this year, actually, the Canadian government has extended the deadline to the end of February for charitable receipts, which means you can make a donation up until the end of February to the Narwhal, and you will get a tax receipt for the 2024 tax year. So, it is members that support our work and allow us to do journalism independently. We don't run advertising. We have, we're relying almost entirely on readers to support our work, and we've been able to grow and become one of the largest newsrooms in Canada. Like, we're at the point where we're almost as large as the Montreal Gazette in terms of staff right now. One of my former employers, who I love as well, and is a great publication. But journalism in general, we really need to support it these days. We're under attack. There are regimes around the world, including in the US, that are openly and actively and aggressively attacking journalists and attacking free speech, trying to confuse people with misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, and it's hurting society right now. And it affects your way of life. It affects the cost of living. It affects your health. It affects the environment. For all those reasons, if any of all of you watching, just pick one journalism outlet and please give to it, whichever one it is. And you're doing so much to support a free democracy. And so thanks for that opportunity. And yeah, I think it's great what you're doing with Game Over as well. And I hope many people will support your work and help you grow as a media organization too.
I hope so too. And yeah, that is kind of the thing about indie journalism is like, unfortunately, it is kind of, it's not begging, it's asking, but you need support from your audience to continue going. And these indie journalism groups that are, getting bigger in like the Narwhal. I know like the Rover is growing here in Montreal locally as well, with our friend Tito Curtis behind the scenes there and building that up. But it can't function without people who contribute to it, not just the people like the journalists doing the work, but also the folks paying those journalists so that they can live in this society that keeps on getting more expensive, while also putting themselves at risk to do investigations so that we actually know what's going on. And, there's so much going on all the time. And frankly, we're losing our newsrooms across this country. They're being whittled down to nothing. You mentioned that you're close to the same size as the Montreal Gazette. I believe the Montreal Gazette is no longer in the Gazette building downtown. Their newsroom is now so small. So this stuff is important.
Office, but it's smaller than, they for a number of years, they had a great location with the logo, St. Catherine, corner Peel, not too far from the Bell Center. And the numbers, they can use support as well right now.
Yeah. Everyone in journalism. It's important to hold powerful people accountable and to keep us informed. So, Mike, thank you so much for doing this. I hope we get to do it again on a game where we can actually talk about the game and not be too depressed by it. And hopefully without a couple little ones distracting me the whole time.
like Ken Hughes says, you can't win out of every 10 games for the rest of the year. You have to lose a few games, and
This is true.
I'm sure this team was tired and they'll bounce back.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks to everyone for joining here, and we'll be back for the next game. I got to put 2 kids to bed. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah. No problem. No, it was great. Yeah, we're off, I presume, right now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, thanks for inviting me, Andrew. Yeah.